Hello, Yogesh. Welcome to the Qualitalks podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. And you are in the pharmaceutical industries for about 30 years now. Is it correct?
Yeah, it's coming up to 40 actually. So,
Wow. Okay.
so it's a
So,
long,
uh,
long time. Yes.
so you really need to update your
Yeah.
LinkedIn account
Profile.
because I looked at it and it says about 29.
Yes. Yes.
Wow,
Yes.
so 40 years. So you have seen a lot, and you're a qualified person, and you were a QP assessor, and now you're a consultant.
Yes. I'm a consultant. Yes.
That's
So I've
great.
been consulting for the last 20 years.
Wow,
My own
okay.
company.
So you must have seen a lot, and you've been to a lot of companies, and I think it would be a great topic to talk about deficiencies in pharma companies, and maybe we could start with uh, training deficiencies, for example, what companies lack, and how you can advise them to fix some of the issues. So, what are the deficiencies that you have encountered in your long career?
Sure. So as part of the auditing I do, I'm also a trained GXP auditor. One of the areas I do look at is training and trading systems as well. So one company I looked at in India, I looked at their system. They had an electronic system that date stamped time all the training of people. But I got very suspicious whether this training was really effective because one employee I picked up and he joined the company 6 months ago. And on his first day, he read 40 SOPs and understood them. And I'm
Okay,
looking at
that's quite
this,
a speed reading skills,
it is impossible
of
because
course.
some of the SOPs were 40 pages long.
Mhm.
And to read and understand an SOP takes maybe 2 or 3 days. So I can't believe someone could do that within a very short period of time. And it's clearly evident that the training was set up just to get people through SOPs. Um, but the systems are, you can go back, you can see exactly how long that person has entered that SOP for, and when you finish.
Mhm.
And my suspicion is, well, you can't read an SOP in 6 minutes. Some of the things are on. He actually opened it,
Mhm.
clicked it, and shut it, and said he was
Okay.
trained in that.
Okay, and the
So
system records it and just he
mm,
signs in electronic signature, and
exactly,
everything is okay, and then nobody checks it or just ignores it.
they ignore it, and which is fundamentally I think is wrong. We should have a system where people really do spend that time and to understand an SOP,
Hmm.
and then record that time as well properly.
Yeah.
Um, but this isn't
Hmm.
only the one person. There were a lot of people that I found that were deficient. So I actually gave them a critical warning, because they really didn't understand what the training system was there for.
Hmm. And
Um,
do you see such problems in many companies, or was it a specific example? Or
no, it does happen in quite a few
in quite
companies.
a
So
few
it's
companies,
yeah.
also in Europe.
Less so in Europe. These happen to be in China and India. These companies I'm into. In Europe, we are better, but
Mhm.
I still feel that there's almost a lot of pressure on people to get trained to SOPs quickly, and so they become active quickly in the engagement. And I think we have to take the time to train and educate people properly, because fundamentally, it's people that are going to be working and making the products, and we want to make them as safe and effective as possible. And really, education and training, I always feel, is key to that.
Mhm. I think from my experience that sometimes reading the SOPs or the training through SOPs is a bit overrated or done not efficiently. So, for example, when people start at new companies, they tend not to have access to all the systems, and so how people uh, just fill in the time. The managers give them a huge stack of SOPs and tell them just read them, and it really doesn't help when you as you said, read 40 SOPs in one day, or even if you do it in 2 weeks, it really doesn't help because you don't really know the company, you don't know the processes, and just reading the SOPs is not the way to go about it. And I think even if you take those 40 SOPs and you disperse it in 2 weeks, without seeing the process and just reading it, it still doesn't get you where you should be in the
I
training.
absolutely agree with that, Jan, 100%. You should be, the SOPs are part of that. The actual on-the-job training is also important as well. So, you've got to understand the process before you understand the SOP.
So how companies should go about it? So let's say there is a new worker who comes in to work. How should they start the training process? So of course they have a plan, but how should they improve on it?
So it depends where you are. So every job position will have a profile of training that's required. And maybe we should sit down and understand that. If you're an operator on a packaging line, what you need to do is understand the procedures that really affect your job. So those are critical. And also there's some of the quality SOPs like change control or deviations and that sort of thing. So, every profile should have a training matrix around it that people then, and then it's agreed
Mhm.
with the manager. And these are the critical ones for your job. These are the nice to haves. So, there's a priority list of procedures that need to be assigned. So, as a QP, when I go into a new company, I really have to understand all the products, the processes, and the procedures as well. So, I do take time to understand all that. In a similar way, I think a full-time operator needs that as well. And, the best companies have what I call education programs in place for the rank you are, for the level you are, and where you're coming into. We also say GMP training, yes, that's great, but if you're very efficient and knowledgeable on GMP, is that always necessary? I would say, once a year, as long as you're getting that, you're covered.
Yeah, so I agree on that you really need to have a good training program, and also with the SOP part. So there is a lot of pressure for people to read the SOPs because they must sign them when new SOP comes out. You have a limited time to read it and to implement it, and I find that usually it is required to know and understand SOPs that don't have anything to do with your job or your requirements. And people just do it because they're required to do it and they sign for it. And I find that it doesn't bring you anywhere. So, what do you think about it?
I think you're absolutely right. It's ones that you really need to do your job. Those are the ones you need to develop and be trained on first. So, and those that not apply to you, you may need knowledge that they're there and know where to get them, but you don't need to have a detailed knowledge of, what they are.
Because from my experience, I know that companies just to cover themselves from inspection, to just make everybody know all the SOPs or at least sign off that they read them. But it's just an empty signature, and I think it takes away from the importance of the
So
SOPs.
and my always beef about some of the SOPs, 40-page SOPs are ridiculous. SOP should be short, factual, 3 or 4 pages at most. Use pictures to
Mhm.
illustrate things. So keep it as simple as possible. Then you meet the compliance requirements. For me, is to make it simple, educate people. I don't like the word training. I prefer education because education is meaning is you can train dogs, but you educate people because they then develop themselves and think further. So I think it's really important that we educate people the right way.
And how should the companies go about it? So, what is lacking in today's education and training programs? So, I love it that you said that education is. for people like training is for dogs, but if we go for the definition, so we have the education, it's more theoretical, general, and the training
Sure.
is more pinpointed and more practical. Or do you see education as in general that you teach people to think
I think you're right.
outside the
I mean,
box?
yeah. So Benjamin Franklin once said that, tell me and I forget, show me, I remember, but involve me, then I will
Hmm.
understand.
Hmm.
So the more you can get people to understand the reasons why you do this, then you develop better with a quality mindset as well. So it's really important that we follow that training path, in my opinion, because we get the most out of people. The most expensive asset a company has is people. And, we should really look after our people because it's with them we make the products. And, we make pharmaceutical products. And of course, if we make them wrong, we could harm patients. So it's really critical we use that. Also, I think education by using more examples with people from experience that will bring in people and involve people, have work sessions, how would you tackle this problem? And it makes people think the understanding better as well. So I think, involve people, then you get a better workforce with more motivated staff and people who understand the reasons why they're doing things. See, one of the most important things for me was my primary school teacher. I had a chemistry teacher, and he made that subject so fascinating for me. He used to have experiments that he used to show us, and practically, and because of that, I got into chemistry, and I always remember that, and that was many many years ago. um, but the man was a fantastic educator because he was passionate about his subject area. And if you got passion, then
Mhm.
people will learn that. So I always say, when you're choosing people, do you have the right skills or the right passion? I always look at passion as being critical because you can train people, you can in the skills, but if you haven't got the right passion or the right attitude, then that can't be trained. That's
Mhm.
there or not.
Yeah, and I think that you're completely correct here, because I think many of the people who do the education and do the training,
Mm.
they're obligated to do so.
Exactly.
And I know that sometimes you go to those people and they're upset because they don't have the time for it, and they just do some example. They just click a few buttons, click, click, click. Did you understand? Sign it,
Yeah.
and goodbye.
Goodbye.
And you need really people who passionate about what they do, and they want to share it, not the people who just are stressed that you're there, or are
Mm.
annoyed that you're there, and they're just doing a favor for somebody, or just feeling in an obligation.
Yeah.
So I think the companies need to look, first of all, the people who don't like to do it, just go and say, it's not my passion. Let me see. Let me do the technical stuff. I'm not. I'm not. I don't want to teach. And the management should listen to that. They shouldn't say no. It's your
Force.
obligation. You must do
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they shouldn't force them, and
Don't
you have the
force
right
them.
people to give the training, which is really important. I think.
Yeah, I think it's better somebody with less experience but has the passion for it, and
Exactly.
he would transmit it much better.
I completely agree. Completely.
Mm. So less just theoretical training or education through SOPs, through theory, rather take the people and show them, and teach by example, and do it regularly.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, do it regularly. I mean, there's higher implications. We cannot teach people anything really. As educators, we help them to discover that within themselves. So that's a quote from Italian astronomer Galilei. He said in the 16th century. He's absolutely right. Education is about motivating people to understand. And the more you understand why we do these things, the people then will appreciate it. And I think that's what's really what the education program or training program should be.
So how do you motivate? I know that when I went to yearly GMP classes, so each
Yeah.
company has those yearly classes that just remind you the general topics, and they bring people from all over, from all the departments, from the quality assurance, from the production, and so on. And usually the people who are not directly quality involved or not QA are usually not motivated to go to these trainings, and they feel that it's a time waste for them. So how do you think that the companies should motivate the people who are outside of quality to participate and really understand that the quality is also their job? Is not, it's not only the job of the quality assurance, but it's also their job to be responsible for the quality, and they need to understand the GMP uh, deeply, and understand also what the quality assurance does, and all what is involved in other departments as well.
So it's a very good point, Jan. Annually we have to do the refresher training, but make it exciting. Make it about real examples that happen within your own facility. And what decisions did you come to? How did you get there? What root cause analysis did you do? What was this right? Have people thinking about, what is the best way, and learn from your own errors, but also learn from history. Quality department's responsibilities is to make sure that this training is current and relevant, and it's not just regurgitated. Watch a video and this is the GMP. It's about selling what you need to do to make your organisation better for compliance, but also for profitability. I always feel that continuous improvement should be everyone's responsibility as well. So I think really engage with people. And one of the things I've been involved with is not just having quality people to do the refresher training. It's to involve people from production, involve people from supply chain. So it makes it feel that quality is every department's responsibility, which it should be. And that's really important. The last training session I did, I had one person from supply chain and one person from production operations. And they talked about some of the things that they've made improvements in their own departments. And that was wonderful because it brought the message that quality is everyone's responsibilities, and which of course it is.
How do you involve them? From your point of view, but should the quality delegate, or what should they really do to involve them and make them feel a part of this quality culture?
So I think the role of quality, often quality department is seen as a policing department, which it shouldn't be. It's a part of the whole supply chain process of making the right products and supplying them. So I want QPs and QA associates working with production. So we have what are called QIPs, quality in production. So these are people who are actually working with production and solving problems locally. And any deviations or corrections they can look at as well. Overall, yeah, quality is still an independent department that makes the overall decisions. But I think the more we work with the operations, supply chain, production departments, and packaging departments, the closer the bonds are, and the more people share if there's an error. You see, the wonderful thing with that happening, right? Quality find out exactly what's happened quite early, and we're able to make a decision whether we segregate that part of the batch or not. If it's made later, we may lose the whole batch. So it has real cost implications for the business as well. So I think trying to build quality in and having people involved, that's really key. So to me, having quality in production is really important. And I think, you build better relationships that way as well. So you work together to get the desired outcome, which is a quality product.
Yeah. And I agree with you completely. A while ago, I did a podcast with Alex Hall, and we talked about risk analysis. And I mentioned that the companies, the pharmaceutical companies, should learn a bit from the other industries, like the finance, for example, and use the three lines of defense risk management approach. So it's basically, it says that the uh, people in the first line of defense are the people on the ground, and they should be responsible for the risk management in their department. So they should take responsibility. And the quality assurance department, which would be the second line of defense, they would be there just to assist, to review, um, to make sure that everything is done according to regulations. And the third line of defense would be some external audit or some corporate audit that just review it. And in that way, you give the people on the ground, the people in the production, the people in logistics and quality control and so on, the responsibility for the quality in their department, and they feel also the mutual feeling and the responsibility for quality and feel part of it. What do you think about this approach?
I think it's a really good approach. I mean, I know Alex very well, and there's a lot of things in other industries that do well that the pharmaceutical industry could really learn from. The aeronautical industries, the clean room manufacturing standards, really high. I mean, they have class one clean rooms and things like that. So, there's a lot you can learn. And I think the pharmaceutical has been a bit arrogant, thinking that they're the best in everything. They're not, and we could learn from other industries, other ways of doing things, other ways of risk analysis, to make our processes in the pharmaceutical industry better. And I think absolutely, we should look at the best practice, whether it exists in a different industry, it really doesn't matter. You want to leverage that into your industry, into your company, to make your company more efficient and more effective. So yeah, I'm all for learning things from other ways, other companies, how they do their risk assessment. It's really important because the way we frankly do it is not very good in the pharmaceutical industry, and we need to learn, we need to get better. I mean, there's people there with CAPAs, they have no more than 2 weeks, they close them out within 2 weeks. In the pharma industry, I'll go there, we've got CAPAs open for 2 or 3 years or even longer, which is ridiculous,
Yeah.
So, we really need to look at better ways of doing things. And look at other industries, look at other.
Yeah. And why is that? Why is it that the other industries take care of their CAPAs better, although the pharma industry is so critical for human life and it's being neglected? Is it because other industries feel the impact of each CAPA in their financial status, and then the pharma feel it less, or they just represent it not well enough for the upper management?
Well, I think they don't present it in the best way for upper management to make decisions, but this is what people need to do. If there's a really serious risk, obviously that should be escalated up to senior management straight away. But in a lot of cases, these CAPAs are lower risk, and I don't know why they're not being closed down. There's less priority on them, as people leave it for, months. I don't know, I have to close that out for another 2 months, and then they wait, until the last day, and then they make a decision, which is the wrong decision. It's often down to human error. I see so many CAPAs that come to the end, and the cause is down to human error. Actually, it's not. It's usually a systemic problem. We should look at systems rather than blaming people all the time. And that's one
Yeah.
thing that I'm very keen to do. A lot of the errors are systemic, and look at your SOPs, look at your systems, look and try and find where the real fault is for that error to happen. If you don't, it will recur. It will recur again and again and again. And, companies spend a lot of time and money, on chasing CAPAs, right? You look at the number of man hours, that is really a cost to the company and the business. So, we always did cost analysis along with CAPAs as well. So that's a good way of people understanding how much that CAPA being open is costing the business. and potentially some jobs as well. They can't recruit because that's they haven't got the money to recruit people because the CAPAs are being open. A lot of the CAPAs can be effective. I went into a company once and we sat down for 3 weeks and we closed out 300 CAPAs in that time. A lot of them were low-hanging fruit and could be closed off very quickly. Some of them were more critical. In fact, some of them more important. So they got raised to senior management, and there was then real effort to address those. But a lot of them were related around procedures that weren't correctly written. And once you got the fixes done, we never had those problems again.
Yeah. So
So
I know it also that there are so many CAPAs that there are so many deviations that occur because people just rate them as minor, close them, and move on with the day. But people don't count the hours and the time they spend only to document this this deviation and the kappa and the evaluation, and just the time that it takes to write it down and to close it,
exactly.
and the time of the managers that have to sign it and review it, I find that the time that is wasted there costs so much money, and I think that sometimes there are kappas and some deviations that people say, okay, we don't want to fix it because it costs X money, right? And because it's so much, it's so expensive, but they don't think how much time is wasted on it and how much money is wasted on it that is translated to the time that you pay to your employees. And not time ago, I said, and I posted this on LinkedIn, that I said, what is your most precious resource? What is the most precious resource? And this is always will be time, because it's the only resource that doesn't grow. You cannot mine it. You cannot
Yeah,
store it.
correct.
And this is something that Peter F. Drucker said, and he is one of the most famous consultants for executive.
Sure.
And he says the best executives and the best managers are the ones who understand the value of their time. And this is something that you must work with and understand that time you cannot buy. You cannot buy it back. You cannot store it. If you lose it, it's gone forever. So you really need to think and really evaluate how much time you waste on those CAPAs. Just let the people in your organization, let them write it down, how much time they spend on petty deviations, and just
Yeah.
put it together. Look at your trend analysis, and just think how much hours you waste on it, and think how much money it would spare you if you just do a good root cause analysis and just close it once and for all.
Yeah, I mean, this is precisely, we want to get people trained in that mindset, to look at it, really small deviations, you got to consider whether they are true deviations. If not, these could be closed within a day or even less. You shouldn't be having these holding. And the thing is, right, the more deviations you have in your system, the slower things tend to move anyway. So the quicker you can make the decisions on small minor deviations, the better, I think, for the business.
Yeah, and I think it is well. And one time I have participated in a GMP training by a really large consultancy firm. I won't
Mm.
name them, and the trainer, with a lot of years and a lot of experience, he said, he explained what deviations, what kappas are, and he said, don't worry about the small deviations, the minor ones. Don't worry about them. Uh, Leave them. Don't prioritize them. Think about the capacity and so on and so on. But then time passes, and it just gathers there, and then you have hundreds of small deviations that
That's right.
and if you have new processes, especially that it will just plug just kill your processes, the whole time that is wasted on it. So I believe that it's really wrong way looking at it. So for me, deviation is a deviation. It's a problem with the process, and even if it doesn't impact your product in that, it does impact your working process and your business process.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the more you can close off these smaller deviations, the more then you've got the time to focus on the more important ones. As you say, time is money, resources are limited. QA people, people say, "Oh, we need more people." You don't need. Sometimes you need to focus on the important ones that really matter. But make sure that these small deviations are closed off quickly because they don't hold up the system.
Yeah, and I think that people should take a bit more responsibility for some of the issues. I'll give you an example. One time, there in a system that I worked at, there were constant deviations, and we knew the reason for that. It had to do something with the system, with the quality management system, and it was like that forever. But we never encountered it because with all products, we didn't have to do some of the processes. We didn't have to go to these specific settings. And suddenly, with a new process, it pops out and it causes deviations that people had to spend hours manually fixing it. And the solution was simple: change the system. Do a change the system. Very simple. But because it was a big company, and there is so much bureaucracy. So they say, okay, we have a meeting with those global committee for the quality management system. It's one in 6 months. We need to sit together. I need to explain the issue, and they will say, no, we don't have time. And there is enough that one person says no, and it falls between the chairs. And that's it. And the issue was closed, and we kept doing everything manually. And I believe it's such a wrong approach, and especially for big companies, because they think, okay, the time, because we are so big, we lose X amount of time, Y amount of money. But we are a big company, we'll just hire another person who does this manual labor. And just because they don't want to open some conflicts, and they just engage in some communication. And I'm just wonder why is that like this.
Yeah, it's but I also feel that QA people need to justify their jobs sometimes, so sometimes they create this turbulence, which I've seen happen. It's unfortunate, but we've got to be more efficient. The cost of medicines is going to have to come down. There's going to be competition. The cost of getting new medicines to the market. We're always going to be constrained by governments on pricing. So we have to work smarter now. We have to work more efficiently. We have to work better because at the end of the day, we are patients as well. We will get ill and we will need those medicines, and we want to pay a fair price. I don't want to pay a ridiculous price for medicine because, to be honest, a lot of companies are now facing problems trying to get a medicine approved, but because of the price, it won't be approved because there'll be holds on that. So it's a shame, but we've got to be efficient now. That's the main drive, I think.
Mm-hmm. So the medicine won't be approved because of the price, or the company won't push it further because they say, okay, we don't have the finance.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't got the finance. I mean, we got the NICE in the UK that set up, to see whether the cost effectiveness of a drug, and if it's too high, it won't be prescribed. So
it's really unfortunate. It's really unfortunate that so it costs so much money to bring a product to the market, right? It's about 1 billion, and it rises instead of going down. Yeah. It rises, and I believe it would change as soon as there are some great companies that work on innovative ways to use artificial intelligence to test molecules. So for now, when you do it manually, it takes one molecule out of 10,000 to and you takes 10 years, and so many fail. But if you have from those 10,000, then at least 5,000 come to the market, and you just cut all this laboratory work and all this testing. So it's
I mean, we've got artificial intelligence, big data analysis are all key drivers in the way the industry is moving into the future, which which hopefully will reduce the prices of drugs getting to the marketplace, and hence the price to the patient and the consumer.
Yeah. But still, we also need to take some of this efficiency to the pharma and think about the processes and, like you said, learn from other industries and not being cocky about it and say, okay, we are pharma because we are so regulated, but also the finance industry is so regulated, and also the car industry, and they have such great systems in place, and and the medical devices
Medical devices, yeah, I was just going to say,
they're so good because they don't rely on clinical trials, because you cannot implant something and there is no clinical trials, so they do hell of statistics, and the processes are like a clockwork. So we rely a lot on validation of the process, but we don't rely enough on everything around it, right?
I think there's so much we can learn from the car industry, from the medical device industry, from other aeronautical industry. I mean, that's key. What they do is really important. Let's learn from these companies and bring them in. Look at the best practices there, and some of those will be transferable to pharma. People always say, "Oh no, this is the way we've always done it, and this is the way it should be done." But no, things are changing, and we have to change with that as well. And I want this industry to grow and survive and be successful. And the only way they can do that is by changing itself.
So how can they initiate this change, for example? So would it is it plausible to bring some consultants from other industries to look at the processes, or to send someone from inside to other companies to look at the process?
I think there's a number of ways, and and big companies. I know one Swiss company has brought in consultants from the outside that worked in other industries to help look at how it's doing its business as well, and that's been very successful as well. And they're moving in that area of big data analysis and artificial intelligence in a really big way. But other smaller companies have not done that, and it's but you don't have to bring in many consultants. You can bring in one or two, and then take the advice. Or you can have another company I know has actually said, look, we would like to spend 6 months in your company, and we'll have someone from your company spend 6 months within pharma.
And it's a great idea, exchange of
I
ideas.
think in that way you can get a lot of exchange of ideas without
paying.
Without not paying a lot of money, because you've got ideas, why you can make things better and that sort of thing. And sometimes it needs someone from the outside to see, because you're too blinded in pharma sometimes, thinking this is the way we have to do it, this is what the regulations say. But the regulations are for us to change. If there's better ways of doing that. One of the things I'm involved with is stem cell research and development. So ATMPs is a very advanced thing. There are things that we do so fast in that world, and yet these products are still medicines. They're sterile medicines. They're going to people. These are cells taken from your own person or from other persons. So they have all that controls around them, and yet they are becoming efficient. And these products are being approved within 5-6 years. So rather than the 10, 15 years it takes a normal pharmaceutical. So and again, it's important to learn that and have the risk assessment, and that's important. It's the risk assessment, how you do that. Have the analytical data to justify reducing the amount of clinical testing you need to do. And now we got companies like Google and Amazon coming into the pharmaceutical world. I think they'll make a big change in the way we run our business.
Yeah, they will do amazing change because they come from a fast-paced environment, very technological environment, very agile environment, and I hope they don't get too much of barriers because of regulatory
Yeah.
things, but I think they are so adaptive. And the culture in these 20 years of this technological advancement, and that it's amazing how those companies survive on being so agile and so flexible.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I think the regulations are changing, and the regulators are listening. It's a wonderful thing.
Mhm.
With this COVID-19 vaccine, one of the companies I've been working with, it's amazing how flexible the
Mhm.
regulators have become. And you put a proper risk analysis proposal, they usually will buy that as well. But we need to develop medicines quicker. We got things like the COVID-19. We'll probably have other viruses in the future. We need to develop systems quicker for treating people and saving people's lives, of course.
So there's a lot of cooperation now between many companies, and they try to bring some. Yeah, it's a great cooperation, helping each other, trying to bring the product to the market. I really hope that it doesn't make the drugs unsafe, because you
Yeah,
just you do the clinical trials too quickly on the
yeah,
too few
yeah,
people. But in some cases, if you give it to just maybe not to healthy patients, but maybe someone who is already
yeah. So
ill,
yeah,
if there
yeah,
would be some drug that would be better, right? But
yeah,
yeah, so
yeah,
I believe that the regulation in pharma are there for a reason, and it took so many strategies
yeah,
um, to come there, and I think everybody is afraid what happens if something fails, and so because they don't, especially in Europe, so there the QPs are. Responsible, and they're accountable by law, and they can go
sure,
to jail or something goes wrong. So maybe there's a lot of there's um, um, a bit of uncertainty when it comes
sure,
to change,
yeah.
because they say, okay, we don't want to take the chance to do a change.
Yeah. I mean, the thalidomide incidents in the 60s that happened, I still feel there was a misunderstanding of how that drug was, and they didn't test it in pregnant animals.
Mhm.
At the time, the scientific belief was that it wouldn't go from the mother to the embryo.
Mhm.
But it obviously changed a lot of things. So these risks, I think, are there, and these things are we've got to look at, to make sure that the drug is safe and effective. That's the first thing,
Mhm.
Um, but we can use data to, preclinical data. We can use analytical testing. We can use other data to try and give evidence that is safe. We learned from that, and that was a terrible disaster that happened. And that's what a lot of QPs are there. We don't want that to happen again. But there's a lot of risk analysis that we need. We didn't do much risk analysis in the 1960s, when that drug became licensed. It was licensed in a number of countries, but it never got licensed in the US. It was the FDA that stopped that getting
Yeah.
into the US. A lady, fantastic lady, she always believed there wasn't enough data to support the claims the pharmaceutical company
Mhm.
were
Yeah.
making.
She was already also rewarded for that later,
Yeah,
and
she was. I mean, she got the highest award in the US for a civilian, and she died at the age of 101, and she
wow.
lived a good
Mhm.
life.
Yeah.
So she was a national hero in the US, and
Mhm.
yeah, you know, and again in Europe, we suffered badly from that because we allow that drug to be passed and approved into a number of European countries as well.
Yeah. So we need to understand. So from one side, we need to keep the regulations. From the other side, we need to understand that uh, the technology that we have now is not the same technology 80 years ago. Right, so
Correct.
it's not the same, or 60 years ago, it's not the
Yeah,
same technology. We have so much, um, uh, so many systems in place, so many, uh, yeah, gatekeepers, so
yeah,
many software that the artificial intelligence and the statistical tools that we can use today.
exactly. And that's the really important thing. we've got so much data that we can analyze, and we've got really powerful
Yeah,
computers and
exactly.
programs that really can do that for
Yeah,
us to give us the right information to move forward as well.
exactly. So I think that really people need to look at data. I also talked with, I had a great podcast also with Doron. He is a CEO of a company that produces QMS systems, and
Yeah,
he said for him the QA in the future are data analysts. They're
yeah,
people who sit, they take the data, they look at the data, and then they decide what to do according to the data. And the quality management systems need to go in this direction, that they harmonize everything. They harmonize everything from all the business areas and the intention areas, put it in on one screen, and then you can change the view and change the data that you want to look at, and then just um, have insights inside the things that you are not aware of.
yeah.
So you just need to really look at the data, the trend analysis, to understand what is wrong.
Absolutely. Data will give you the evidence to make the right decisions, and that's what that's what as a QP I do. When I do a batch review, I look at all the data that's presented to me. I know what's critical. I know what I need to look for, and people supply me that to make the right decision to go forward. And that's I always do that, and I think QA will become like that at the moment, rather than be more of a policing thing than checking systems and putting this form to this form and making this. I want QA to move into that direction, become more technical, as I say, rather than following a procedure. Look at the procedure. If it's not adding value, do you need it? I say, well, I've heard many QA people say, "Oh, this is our system. We have to follow our system." I said, "Well, the system is not, first of all, adding any value. It's not. Do you really need to have it? That was the way we've always done it, and we've got to move away from what we've tended to do and move to a newer future where we use data analysis as key to make the right decisions going forward."
Yogesh, thank you very much for
Yeah,
talking to me, and your ideas are amazing and great and very helpful. And I really hope that if people in different companies would find them useful and also implement them.
I hope so as well. We'll see. But happy to do another session on anything you want.
Thank you very
Okay.
much. Thank you for watching or listening to this episode of the Qualitalks podcast. If you enjoyed it, please consider sharing it and subscribing so you don't miss new episodes. Stay compliant and see you in the next one.